As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more.
Chris says they rightfully describe themselves as a lifestyle and media platform, which I respect entirely. I mean, Chris, it's hard to call themselves an esports org, to your point, when so little of the revenue comes directly from that. And I think the media story, the media company story, just sells better right now. I think that's just the reality. Stuart says they're really looking at content for revenue growth according to that projection. Absolutely, Stuart. To me, that's the big takeaway, which is content is the biggest part of this story. Content is the crux of this entire story. And I love to see it because frankly, that's the bet we're making here at Holodeck is on content. So it's good to see that people are getting excited about it and that we're getting these kinds of valuations on businesses that I think are also very interesting. Stuart says, and potentially vulnerable then to changes in the deals of those platforms as revenue sources. Yeah, I mean, they're dependent on the platforms like social platforms and things like that and wherever they distribute their content. But fundamentally, I think there's no one big risk factor there. The risk factor, Jimmy, to your point in this deal, and it's obviously not in this presentation, is FaZe has a checkered history, has a checkered past. And as a private company, it's sort of easy to get away with that, right? You're not beholden to anybody except, the shareholders of the company. And even that, there's no rule that says you have to do anything for them, right? Here, as a public company, as a NASDAQ listed company, a lot of the dirt may see the light of day, and a lot of the dirt, a lot of the stuff that maybe is going behind the scenes that's not 100% kosher, that's been rumored or that's made the rounds of the gaming news cycles. If that comes to light from a NASDAQ standpoint, from an official regulatory standpoint, this may be very bad for business for FaZe. I guess I'm curious if you guys think, Lindsay, maybe to you, is there long-term risk as a public company that they can't act like the FaZe of old, right? Like they can't do complete nonsense and get away with it. They can't play fast and loose anymore.
I don't know if I see that necessarily as a risk or as a wake-up call to start start creating a better run or maybe more profitable business. But I definitely think Jimmy's initial point about that was very salient. And we've seen like the sort of the rise and fall of FaZe in the media, depending on what the news is like that week. And that's certainly, as looking at it from the investor perspective, that's certainly not something that I would be a huge fan of, but this might be what they need to turn around that kind of culture. Because a couple big stock hits is really going to motivate anyone who's an activist investor to step up and try to pull in the reins on the company. Alternatively, they could do it internally. They might not even need an activist investor to make them want to pull the reins in and make smarter decisions. So I guess my hope is that they do find a way to run a profitable and find a good system that works for them. But the way things are going, or the way things have gone prior to becoming public, it makes me nervous for what's going to happen in the next couple of years.
Is anyone surprised that as part of this, and this is the last question I'm going to ask on this, and then we'll move forward, guys, but is anyone surprised that they didn't add someone else to the management team, or like someone with more public company experience, a more steady hand, maybe, as part of this transaction? Like that, is anyone surprised that the management team seems to be the same exact group of people that have, I would argue, not run this poorly, clearly, because they have $1 billion valuation now, but have spent a ton of investor cash to get here, have sort of made a bunch of very public missteps along the way. And I'm not saying throw them all out, but I'm saying, maybe bring in 1 or 2 people as sort of confidence that there's experience in the room, there's some public company experience in the room, whatever that is, whatever is sort of missing in that core team.
I think it's an interesting point. Kind of, I guess, maybe speaks a little bit to I don't know any of these guys, so I don't want to talk about their character or experience. Clearly they've built a built a large enterprise, so kudos to them. But it probably speaks a little bit to how the process went down with the SPAC and the leverage, who had the power and who had the leverage that the SPAC sponsors and whoever's in that pipe didn't want or demand someone like that to come in and be part of the organization. Either they trust these guys and are obviously they do because they're betting on them, but or these guys had the leverage where even if it was suggested, they said, well, no, we don't want that. We don't want that. So
I would guess, and this my prophecy here for what it's worth, half the management team 2 years from now is not at the company anymore, whether it's because they can't operate the same way they've operated previously, or because they've taken their cash off the table and there's no interest in continuing to work at FaZe, right? Like, to me, it's one of those two things, but I have a funny feeling this management slide looks very, very different a year or 2 from now than it does today. And then the question will become, does the coolness of FaZe survive if you change half or 3/4 of the people on that slide?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I really think that I don't know anything about the business or the financials behind it, right? Let me make that very clear to anybody watching. But I do think that the 5 to 7 members of FaZe Clan that they're putting on this board are probably the founding members that want to just get a cut and just be out. That's what I'm imagining. It doesn't, knowing them and like knowing their Twitter presences and YouTube presences, I can't imagine that they're on the board for any financial reasons or for their insight and business prowess. But, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I do believe that 2 years from now, they'll bounce and then they'll have an entirely new FaZe Clan leading the way, which is what they're developing now with their younger audience and reach out in Fortnite and things like that. So I think, I agree with you. And I think that's what's going to happen for the future.
I am excited to see FaZe Food, though. That is on this slide here, just FYI. So, food is coming in 2024. FaZe Food, FaZe Peripherals, FaZe Retail. So we should be seeing...
there's NFTs
and the NFTs that solves. That's where all the content dollars are coming from, guys. It's selling the NFTs.